Live from Toronto to the world.
Josh!
This is Josh Holiday Live. Talk that rocks.
The public needs to be informed.
Josh might surprise us.
Got an opinion? Dial 647-6YO-JOSH.
When you hear him, you're like, what?
Josh Holiday Live starts now.
Hello, it is Josh Holiday Live. The problem with that title for my show is sometimes, on relatively rare occasions, I am not actually live. This is one of those cases. I am not live. I am out of town, but the show must continue. So if you're hearing this, it is pre-recorded, and I may already be dead. Wouldn't that be a bummer way to end 2021? We are just before the new year, and I thought I'd play some of the highlights of the last 10 shows or so. Going to have a interview with a top virologist, vaccinologist later in this show. She was featured in the Nature of Things documentary, The Great Vaccine Race. But first of all, going to play you my conversation with Kevin Hearn. He is a musician who has been with Barenaked Ladies since '96, has done a lot of solo work. In there, had a battle with leukemia. And when we spoke to him, it was earlier in December when the Barenaked Ladies were gearing up for a run of shows over the holidays. This is what that sounded like. Kevin? Hello?
Hi, Josh.
How are you?
Good, man.
Long time since we've last chatted.
It's been years.
I think the last, obviously on social media, but that doesn't really count, I guess. But I think the last time we met in person was out in Calgary, way back, I think 2006, and you were coming through with BNL, and you did some live songs on the radio for us there. So what's happened since 2006?
Not much.
Bring me up to date.
No, yeah.
Well, let's talk. I guess it's been an unusual time for everybody during the last 2 years or so. What did you get up to during the pandemic?
I laid low and sort of got into projects that I took advantage of having the time at home, and tried to just learn parts of my craft that are difficult on the road to do, like learning recording programs and writing a little. And I don't know. It was just nice to kind of get into a routine of doing that.
So, did you put music out at some point? I think you did in 2019, didn't you? Was that just before the pandemic?
Yeah, I put out a record called Common Sense, which was mostly instrumental, and I sort of followed that up with something last December. It's going to come out in February, but I went to Quebec and recorded a record of solo piano improv. And I don't know, it was an interesting time to make a record like that. I've never done it that way before, but just being in the middle of a pandemic and sort of struggling with all the thoughts that I'm sure all of us were, it was a really cathartic experience.
Where in Quebec did you go?
We did 3 days at 3 different locations, 3 different pianos, and 3 hours on each piano. And the first was a church, a cathedral in Montreal that was closed down because of COVID. And then we recorded in a closed down hotel out in the country. And then one day in Pierre Marchand's studio, which was also shut down. So, just kind of took advantage of being able to kind of use these spaces that weren't being used at the time.
There's a kind of a ghostly feel, I guess, to going into a place that's essentially abandoned due to the pandemic.
It was. I was inspired to do that. I've always, traveling on tours, sometimes you end up in these old hotels and you'll be walking down a hallway and all of a sudden you'll see this piano in a dark room or corner, and it's just sort of been forgotten or been there for years and years. And I thought if we could find spaces like that kind of seemed haunted and just improv piano in those spaces kind of feeding off of the energy, that idea attracted me. But because of COVID and the border being closed, we were sort of limited to where we could go. So we chose Quebec, and because we had a lead on that cathedral, and it was so nice to play in there. The sound was so huge, and the reverb, the natural reverb. So it was fun.
I'll bet. So right now you just started last night with Barenaked Ladies doing this hits for the holidays shows, right? Was it last night with the first show?
Last night was the first show.
And how did it go?
It was great. Yeah, I mean, we really have been rehearsing the last few weeks, and we don't often have time to put in that much rehearsal. But we were all laughing because we actually felt nervous before the show, and we've never been so well rehearsed for anything. But it's feeling really cool to play in front of people again, like a room full of people, and everyone there. I think with all the audiences that we played to lately, I feel a sense of sort of deeper appreciation for what is happening, enjoying things that we all may have taken for granted before the pandemic.
Well, I think that's probably true. It's almost like everyone can kind of just release a little bit after being pent up for so long. It's just kind of like, the delayed gratification, I guess is a good term for it.
Yeah, and it's nice to see other people and laugh with other people. And for us, it's fun to sort of be silly and do what we do. We couldn't do it for, a couple of years. So it felt good.
And what's the setup? Is it a fluid playlist, or is it all sort of set?
It's definitely set, but we always make up songs and change things up on the spot sometimes. But because there's quite a few, we have some cool videos for some of the songs, and so there's a bit of a structure to it.
Well, I guess it's a theater show too, so it sort of has more of a theatrical element to it, which is hard to improv.
Yeah, and we have an intermission.
Oh, wow. Intermission. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
And it's mostly it's playing the hits basically and some holiday music, or what gets played during the show?
Holiday songs. If anyone knows our holiday record, we play some from that. We play, some of the hits that you might expect, and we play a few sort of deep cuts, some from our new record, and just some band favorites. And we play one of our snack time songs as well from our kids' record, because we're also doing matinee shows on the Sundays at 2 p.m., where we're performing mostly from our snack time record. So that's a lot of fun too.
Well, good for kids over the holidays. So it's the next couple of Sundays you're doing the snack time shows, Sunday afternoons?
Yeah, the next 3 Sundays, yeah.
And it's all happening at it's called the Panasonic Theater now. The theater's changed names so often.
Yeah, it's not called the Panasonic
what is it
anymore.
Now?
It's called the CAA Theater.
Oh, okay. But it's basically just south of Bloor on the east side of Yonge. Is that the theater?
Correct, yeah.
Excellent. Okay. And tickets, I think, just go to barenakedladies.com. Is that the best place to go?
Yeah, or barenakedladies.com or mervish.com if you want more info from the theater.
Excellent. I don't know when the first time we actually hung out together was in Montreal during a Just for Laughs festival many moons ago. We may have interacted at some point during the Look People period, because I remember going to a bunch of those shows and kind of hanging out. But we were both just hanging out at the Just for Laughs festival. Your cousin is Harland Williams, and you have an affinity for comedy, as do I. And I guess the situation was there was a guy who wasn't a comedian who wasn't on the festival, but he came up, I think, from Boston, and he got a hotel room. This was his moonshot. He got a hotel room, tons and tons of alcohol, like cases and cases of beer. And his idea was to go down into the hotel bar and try and round up powerful people and agents to come up to his room for a party. It wasn't super successful, but we were there. And I remember I remember just being kind of giddy and having a lot of fun, but I also remember leaving the hotel as the sun was coming up, carrying a case or two of beer that went undrunk during his party. How's Harley? Is he? Have you been in constant contact?
Yeah, Hearn and I are good friends and talk to him regularly. So,
and you have a sort of project that you do together called the Cousins, which is still musical, but it has a bit of the twisted mind of Harland Williams added to the mix.
It's funny because I want to work with Harlan because I want the opportunity to have fun and be funny, and he wants to work with me because he wants to be like a rock star. So he comes at me sometimes with these earnest lyrics, and it ends up somewhere in between, sounding like Ween or something to my mind. Anyways, like it's all sort of well crafted, and we work hard at it, but it has this kind of weird edge to it as well. It's like, is this funny or is this just silly or whatever? I don't know.
Well, Ween's not a bad comparable. You could do worse than Ween, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about you toured in a touring band with Lou Reed, and it always seemed like, wow, sort of strange bedfellows, a guy from Canada hooking up with Lou Reed. How did all of that come about?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but the short version is, Lou is my hero. All through, since I heard Walk on the Wild Side when I was, 9 years old. And I knew all of his songs, had all his records. And I met him because we were on the same label in the States, Reprise. And Howie Klein sort of connected us on the phone. And then I met him again through this fellow named Jeremy Darby here in Toronto, who was Lou's sound man. And Lou invited me to come to New York, and as he put it, he said, let's see if we can play together. And he was just a good friend to me. He treated me like a son, and I loved him very much, and I miss him very much. But it was a real honor to be his friend and be his band leader.
I imagine. Yeah, it's hard to fathom when you're young that you'll someday be that close with one of your idols.
It really is, but in the same, it also felt perfectly. It perfectly made sense. It's like I knew all of his songs, great respect for him, and he said in interviews sometimes that I knew his songs better than him.
What's your best memory of spending time with him?
There's many. There's one little funny story. We were on a plane, and we were boarding the plane, and I was already in my seat on the aisle. and Lou was on the window seat, but he came onto the plane and he was walking slow. I could tell he was maybe a little stiff, and I said, "Hey, Lou, do you want me to move over so you can sit in the aisle?" And he leaned down and said, "Kevin, if you ask me one more nice question, I'm going to kill you."
Nice.
So, he was such a funny man. I just loved those little jokes, funny things he would say every day. So,
nice. Well, you have the memories.
Yeah, I mean, the best memories are just the working with him and making music with him, and I'd give anything just to play one more show with him. They were like, you were playing like your life depended on it. Every night was important to him, and he just pushed us to the edge of our abilities every night. It was amazing.
What were the shows like in terms of size and fan base, that type of thing at that stage?
Well, my first tour was in the U.S. and we were playing, theaters and clubs, and then we went over to Italy and France, and we were playing the big theaters and the big festivals. I'd look behind me one day on stage, and standing right behind me watching the show, standing in a row, is Patti Smith, Iggy Pop, and Morrissey.
Wow.
Yeah. But playing those songs of Lou's, I used to help him make the set lists, and it was just one of the greatest joys of my life, because I love so many of his songs, and I think he liked that I was picking songs that he hadn't played in a long time. Like we played one of his songs called "Who Loves the Sun," which is on the Velvet Underground's record called Loaded, and he hadn't played it in 40 years.
Wow. And
we were rehearsing it. He goes, I forgot what a nice, simple, fun love song this was. And it was just kind of cool.
I guess that for me, that would, I'm kind of jealous that through your work you get to see all kinds of places around the world and travel. Although I guess when you're touring, you don't get a ton of time to explore. What are some of your favorite places?
Well, you do on days off.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes if we're touring somewhere kind of cool, I might add a day or two before or after the tour just so I can go to my favorite haunts, But I certainly love places where there's a lot of musical history. Like in the States, New Orleans, Washington, Detroit, Paris. Gosh, I love Paris, France, Lyon, France. I've got lost in those cities many times. London, England. Yeah, those are some of my favorites. I had a birthday with Lou in Prague once, and that was one of the best dinners of my life. Lou and the band, yeah.
You're listening to Josh Holiday Live. That is Kevin Hearn of Barenaked Ladies, among many other things. It is a best of. We spoke to Kevin earlier in the year. Well, earlier in the month. Beginning of December, talking about a bunch of holiday shows that Barenaked Ladies are doing. We have more with Kevin right after this.
You all know that thing you use to send text? It works for actual mouth talking.
Josh stuff, more Josh stuff.
Get in on the conversation. Punch 647-6YO-JOSH to be heard. Talk that rocks. Josh Holiday Live.
Our whole universe was in a hot, dense state that nearly 14 billion years ago expansion started. Wait, the earth began to cool, the autotrophs began to drool.
We are back with Kevin Hearn a man of many hats. He has a solo career as a musician, Kevin Hearn and Thin Buckle in the past. Also with the Barenaked Ladies, who are currently doing shows at the... Oh, are you getting some feedback there, Kev?
No, I'm good.
No, I was hearing... I heard musical tones. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, sorry, I was playing guitar a bit.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought that was the phone. Yeah. So music is always very close.
Okay.
Barenaked Ladies is doing some holiday shows. You can get tickets through barenakedladies.com or through Mervish. I had a question. Barenaked Ladies have this kind of quirky fact about them in that they provided the Big Bang Theory theme. Are you on the performance or the writing credits of that at all?
Well, I'm not. Ed wrote it, but I certainly helped record it and play keyboards on it and sing on it.
So do you get some Big Bang cash?
Yeah.
Excellent. Because I imagine, I mean, it's quite fortuitous. It's a show that is on all the time on all the channels. Although it just came to the end of its run, but I always sort of wondered about that. I'm sure it's the gift that keeps on giving.
It's it's amazing, and it's for like every one of those things that works out, there's 100 that don't. Where you get asked to submit an idea for a theme song or this or that or demo. Like after a while, you get tired of doing it because so often the project doesn't happen or et cetera, et cetera. But once in a blue moon, it's like you hit the jackpot and everything the stars align, and that's what happened with this show.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's the same thing. Like I've done some acting stuff, and as a Canadian actor, a lot of the bread and butter is doing commercials, and you always hope for that big national that runs for a long time. So
it's interesting because at our shows, we started all of a sudden, we were getting booked at universities again, and we're seeing like a wave of younger people coming to our shows. And it was like, oh, this is from a TV show. And so we weren't playing the song in our set at the time. Now we play it every show,
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the new Barenaked Ladies album.
It's called Detour de Force, and we recorded the bed tracks in January, February of 2020, and then we took a break for March break, and then the pandemic hit, and we had to finish the record under those circumstances, which was strange, but I think it's a pretty cool record.
Nice. During the pandemic, everyone was watching all the television, and stumbled across a documentary in which you are a key protagonist. The movie is called Nothing is Fake. And
there are no fakes.
Oh, there are no fakes. Yeah. Oops. Yeah. It's like that great series, The Lion King. But essentially, you bought a paint from a very well-respected, very well-known Indigenous artist, Morrisseau, and he's been called...
Well, the painting was allegedly by Morrisseau, yes, but I didn't buy it from him. I bought it from a gallery in Yorkville.
Yes. So can you give a brief sort of synopsis of what happened? I mean, essentially you buy this painting, and at what point do you kind of get a little bit suspicious?
Well, I had my worries about it, but because I lent it to the AGO for an art show they were doing, and the head curator told me there were some red flags with the painting, and he was worried about its authenticity. So that led me onto this journey of trying to find out what the truth was about it, which led me into the dark underbelly of an art fraud operation going on. And, the people I met along the way and what I was learning was just so twisted and bizarre and disturbing that I knew the story needed to be told. And so I shared my story with the filmmaker and the director, Jamie Kastner. And we went forward and the film was made.
And I know right now, I don't think I saw it on Prime, but right now it's available on Prime in Canada if you want to check it out. Lots of twists and turns and odd characters. And I guess the oddest thing to me were the people who were collectors who didn't want to know the truth. They would rather there be a mystery out there because they don't want to. I guess they don't want to come to terms with the fact that they might own some forgeries.
Right. Yeah. Or yeah. Well, there's people that are, I think, that are innocent and they are sort of ripped off, and they own these paintings that aren't by the artist they thought they were by. And so they may still appreciate the painting and like it and not want to, stir up. They might not want to go through the trouble of litigation or whatever it might be, because of the stress involved, because of the money involved. But then there's other groups of people, I think, that do know that they were fake and are trading in this business, and they don't want the truth to come out because it would damage their business. That's what I think, anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's the status of the more so market now in terms of his paintings? Is it sort of
Well, I think largely due to my court case, which I won in the end, and largely due to the film, there's way more awareness than ever before to be careful if you're buying a painting. Certainly a more so painting, but. The film was also the catalyst for a new investigation by the police, which has been ongoing for a few years now. And I think when that is concluded and their conclusions are made public, that will really have an effect, and hopefully a positive one on the market.
Well, it's nice that. Go ahead. It's not just the market that's the concern. It's the legacy of a very important Indigenous artist. And it's also important because there's people that are being hurt by the crimes that are going on and what comes along with them. And so hopefully there will be some closure and some justice for some people. Well, I think it's great that. And I think when you make a documentary, you hope that it will have an effect and move the needle. And the fact that it's brought some awareness, but also helped kind of light the fire under the law, as it were, to take another look at this thing. I think that's great.
Yeah, and that's what we were hoping, because I was doing a lot of heavy lifting with it for years, but I'm just a musician, really. That's not my job.
Yeah. We one of the songs that's in regular rotation in my iTunes list. It's a large one, but it's sort of songs that I love. Is a Good Times Virus from I guess way back in 2006, and so it was about a different thing at that time.
Yeah.
I don't know how well known it is that your battle, but now it's taken on new significance and but not a Good Times virus that we're experiencing right now.
No, it sort of has a tone of sarcasm when you hear it now, in this context. It's certainly not a good time. But, yeah, that's from my record, The Miracle Mile.
Yes.
Yeah. And I wrote that when I was recovering from cancer and thinking about, learning so much about the world and business of medicine and pills and pharmacies and, so I think it all still applies to what we're going through today. When you hear the lyrics, you can sort of interpret them a fresh way.
Agreed. And do you ever look back and think, wow, what a journey it's been to date, going through that fight, and you're being involved in the Toronto music scene with Look People, and it's quite a journey.
Quite a journey. Yeah, every day I do, every day I'm thankful that I'm still alive. I almost kicked the bucket a couple times.
Well, I guess it makes it all the sweeter. You appreciate,
absolutely. Yeah, you appreciate life, and you appreciate the good people in your life.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out, and I know you got a show again tonight and over the next couple of weeks. If you want to get tickets for that Barenaked Ladies show, hits for the holidays, you can go to Mervish, or you can go to barenakedladies.com. And you know what? I'm going to play a little bit of Good Times Virus to go out here. Thanks again, Kevin, for taking the time, and good luck with the shows.
Josh, it was nice to see you, man. I mean, nice to talk to you, and thanks for refreshing my memory about the Just for Laughs Festival. It's,
it was a weird
another
night.
lifetime. It's always a weird night with Harlan. Yeah. That's one thing you can count on.
Nice.
All right. Take care, Josh.
Yes, you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
A beautiful night, a festival crowd, a fever is spreading all over the town. The symptoms are sweet, don't know you've been stung. The good times virus has got everyone. Are you who I knew, or who you become? The good times virus has got everyone.
That's a little bit of the song, The Good Times Virus, from Kevin Hearn, thanking him for his time. This is a best of Josh Holiday Live, coming back with a interview I had with a virologist, vaccinologist by the name of Alyson Kelvin. Stick around.
Something bugging you? Need to vent?
Where the is Josh?
This is your unfiltered megaphone.
When you hear him, you're like, what?
Dial 647-6-YO-JOSH now to be heard. Talk that rocks. Josh Holiday Live.
It is Josh Holiday Live. We are not live. It's that time of year. You get it. Doing a bit of a best of. The first episode of The Nature of Things on CBC this fall featured a documentary called Inside the Great Vaccine Race. And one of the doctors featured in it is Dr. Alyson Kelvin. She's a virologist, a vaccinologist at the Vaccine and Infectious Disease Organization in Saskatoon. We chatted with her there, and this is what that sounded like. And that was one thing that when I was watching it, I was sort of like, oh boy. Just watching you get dressed in the protective gear and knowing that there's a deadly virus there. What, for me, I kind of look at it with anxiety, but for you, working with something that's so deadly in such close quarters, what's your anxiety level?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I've been working with viruses that cause significant amounts of disease for about 15 years now. So I have the background and knowledge of how to work with these viruses safely. And the research program that I had developed at Dalhousie University before coming here was very similar to how Vito is structured, working with viruses that infect people and cause similar types of disease. So I had all that background. What was different at Vito is that they have rooms that are specially designed to deal with the virus, but my behavior is the same. So my anxiety level with my training is quite low, knowing that I'm quite protected in that big spacesuit. I'm getting filtered air into me. As long as I follow the rules, I'm safe. So actually, I felt a lot safer being in the lab than I did out in the community where people weren't following the rules. The virus was, going wild, infecting people person to person. So I have a lot of decreased anxiety being in the lab where everything is quite controlled.
Well, that makes sense. So initially, you mentioned Dalhousie in Halifax. At what point did you become aware of the severity of the COVID virus, the COVID-19?
Yeah, and that's such an interesting question. So I just opened up my own research lab at Dal. I'd been studying respiratory viruses and viruses that would be likely to cause a pandemic for about 12 years before that. And in 2017-18, I opened my own lab. And so I had just really gotten into the swing of things at Dal, and we were coming to, it was the end of Christmas break, the end of 2019, the last day, December 30th. I was having a glass of wine, kind of relaxing, going off to bed, and I checked my email one last time. And at the top of my inbox was an email from this, what I call a social network for infectious disease geeks like myself. So anytime there's an outbreak of an infectious disease around the world, we get notified through this email system. It's called ProMed Mail. Anyone who's interested can go and actually sign up for this. So anyway, I get this email saying that there's an outbreak of undiagnosed pneumonia in Wuhan, China. And after studying respiratory viruses, I actually studied SARS-1 during the 2003 outbreak in Toronto. I've done lots of high-path flu, so avian influenza, as well as studying the H1N1 pandemic. This immediately popped out to me. There was about 30 cases of people that had been hospitalized because of this virus causing pneumonia. So I had a couple of thoughts. One was that this virus had spilled over from an animal reservoir and caused complete severe disease in people, anybody who's infected, leading them to be hospitalized. Or what we were seeing, this hospitalization of these 30 people, was really like the tip of the iceberg. We know in regular seasonal influenza that, some people become hospitalized and unfortunately die of flu, whereas others might have a mild disease and almost be able to walk around. So I thought it could be that scenario too, and it could be a lot larger than what we know of. So I immediately was concerned about this, considering it was 30 people. And I sent the email to my father, who also works in infectious disease and has a lab in China. I wanted to know if he had any insight into this outbreak. And that's where things really started to happen for me.
So how does the call come from the lab in Saskatoon? It almost feels like a virus version of the Avengers, calling everyone to come to Saskatoon and work on this vaccine.
Right. So because of being in this type of work for so long, I knew of Vito, and I knew that they had a world-class institute that could not only handle the type of preclinical evaluation that we needed if we wanted to create a vaccine. They, again, as I mentioned earlier, had this facility to deal with the containment of highly pathogenic virus. So I called Vito the first week of January and to see if I could come set up a small, at this time, I was thinking a small little project there. And, were they able to accommodate me? Because my research program at Dell only went to human influenza viruses. So if we were looking at that level 1 to 4, this was a level 2 plus that I had at Dell. Whereas I knew that we would need a level 3, which Vito has, to work on this virus. So when I contacted them, they said, sure. And we started to get plans in place for me to come there, and which eventually, the end of February, I was able to come with a kind of a skeleton crew. My PhD student, Maggie Francis, and a research technician in my lab at the time came to Saskatoon thinking we would stay here for 3 weeks to get this project up and going. But of course, things drastically changed from February to the middle of March when we were scheduled to go back home last year in 2020. And
you basically have been in Saskatoon since that first trip, yes?
Basically. So after those 3 weeks, I had a flight home. I, of course, left my husband and my 2 kids. And so I went home after those 3 weeks, but I knew that my work was in Saskatoon. I couldn't do any work at the time at Dell. Dell had shut down all their research because of pandemic protocols. And I just thought, how could this is my job. This is what I trained to do. And Vito was open because they had to be, and this was their job too. So as soon as I got back to Halifax, I turned right around and came back to Saskatoon, and I haven't left since. So it's been quite a journey. I lived in a hotel while working on vaccine development and trying to understand how this virus is causing people to get so sick and die. So I lived in a hotel from basically February until September last year.
So lots of mints on pillows.
Yeah. No, actually with the COVID protocols, they don't come in and clean your room. I had to clean my own room.
The best thing about going to a hotel is not having to take care of yourself, and yet there you were. The documentary is framed as the great vaccine race, though it's not really a competitive race against other virologists or vaccinologists. I got the sense there was quite a bit of competition. Everyone's in it for the same reason, but all racing towards a vaccine. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so sometimes I have trouble with when people talk about vaccines being a race, but the reason why I did the work that I did and do the work that I do is to save people. So if it's a race against the virus and trying to save lives.
Yeah, that's what. And so, but how does you mentioned the virus email list that a lot of people in your profession are on. How else does the cooperation work during the development?
So interestingly, as soon as I think we really recognized as a research community that, and I'm talking about people who had been doing emerging virus research for quite a while in vaccine development, once that was really cemented that this is a significant problem, the World Health Organization set up working groups of specialized researchers that could focus on what is the epidemiology of COVID-19, what's going on with the development of preclinical testing of vaccines, what's the development of actual vaccines. So the WHO set up these working groups, and although there were working groups previously for other vaccines and other diseases, this is probably the largest effort ever, in which I'm part of 2 of the working groups. And we've been meeting since that probably mid-February 2020, and we meet still to today, where researchers around the world give updates of what they're working on, and we can communicate so we're not doubling efforts. This is really a global goal to produce quality vaccines and stop the transmission of SARS-CoV-2 around the world.
As someone who's spent much of their life working on creating vaccines, how frustrating is the anti-vax movement?
Yeah, so it's another good question, and I really feel right now during the pandemic that our world has changed so much in the past less than 2 years. You know, nobody in recent memory, not since the 1918 influenza pandemic, have we been hit in our communities and throughout society the same, where we had to have complete shutdowns. So at this point, and with having to deal with how SARS-CoV-2 has affected everyone, affected their mental health, having to have communities shut down, and then what seems like the development of a very fast vaccine for this new virus, I can understand how this could be quite confusing to people. So I think, we really have to separate what people have, the questions that they have about COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19 vaccines, with people who are strongly against all vaccines in general. And so I'm not always frustrated. I actually want to be here to help answer questions and share the knowledge that I have. I've been working on coronaviruses since SARS-1 in 2003, where I even helped evaluate different SARS-1 vaccines. So when we developed a COVID-19 vaccine, it actually didn't come out of nowhere. SARS-1 and SARS-2 are quite similar in their target spike protein. And so we were easily able to take the technologies that we had and the information about coronaviruses that we knew from these previous viruses and quickly develop a vaccine, not coming out of the air and not based on kind of fast-tracking things.
That was a conversation with Dr. Alyson Kelvin, a virologist, a vaccinologist for the Vaccine and Infectious Disease Organization in Saskatoon. We spoke to her earlier in the fall about a documentary called Inside the Great Vaccine Race that followed teams of vaccinologists as they tried to come up with a vaccine for the COVID virus, and it worked. We have great vaccines, miracle drugs, if you will. If you have not had a vaccine, get one. If you haven't had your booster, get one. That's all I can say. Do yourself and society a favor. Don't be a dum-dum. This is Josh Holiday Live. Not live. Very close to the new year. I want to say thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back live next year, as they say. If you want to get in touch, you can call that telephone number anytime and leave a voicemail, and it may end up on the air. You can always specify if you don't want it on the air, and we will respect that wish. If you want all the socials, you can go to joshholidaylive.com. That will take you there, and you can hit up all the various social stuff. Other than that, you have yourself a great New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and we will see you next year.
Turn on the lights, open the shades.
The show's over, but the conversation continues. On Twitter at Josh Holiday, on the web at joshholidaylive.com, and hear missed episodes on your favorite podcatcher. Talk that rocks. Josh Holiday Live.